Play and Trade Guitars. I'm John, that's Zach behind the camera, and this is Play and Trade Guitars, where of course we play it and trade it. Today I'm going to take you on a journey comparing the iconic Fender Jazzmaster to the Fender Jaguar. They're often unfairly confused, but both are really exciting guitars with unique voices and great sounds. I'll tell you the main features, a brief history, and then I'll tell you the best models, whether you want a vintage or more contemporary take on these two Fender icons in today's guitar market. At the top, if you're in the market for any gear, make sure you click to buy gear using our link. That's going to give you fast free shipping, easy payment plans, and it really does help our channel. We also have a giveaway. We're going to be giving away a Gibson Les Paul Gold Top Deluxe, and that beautiful guitar will go to one of you soon. Tons of new ways to get entries. All the information is down in the description. So let's get to work on our comparison of the Fender Jazzmaster and Jaguar. So as I break down both models, I want you to remember three things, and that's scale length, pickups, and controls. Those are probably the biggest differentiators across both guitars. I'm going to start with a look at this beautiful Jazzmaster because the Jazzmaster was introduced first in probably what was the best year for electric guitars in 1958. Fender introduced the Jazzmaster. It's a full-scale guitar. For one thing, it had an offset body, which made it easier to play sitting down. It had these pickups which have a distinct mellow, kind of more rounded, warm tone. And they are single coil and they are soap bars, but they're not P90s. And they have a distinct sound that's all their own. I think it's a really good benefit of the Jazzmaster is the way these distinct Jazzmaster pickups sound. You also have this beautiful rosewood fretboard. The Jazzmaster was actually the first Fender guitar to have a rosewood fretboard. Let's talk controls. The controls can get confusing on both the Jazzmaster and Jaguar, but I'll hand it to the Jazzmaster for having a more intuitive set of controls because you have a standard three-way toggle switch to choose your pickup, a standard volume and tone, and then the one extra feature on a Jazzmaster is you have a dedicated rhythm circuit that you turn on or off with a switch. When you're in lead position, you're controlling the pickups with the toggle switch and master volume and tone. When I flip this switch on the upper left bout, I'm in rhythm position, and I'm only using the neck pickup with these two dedicated, actually really cool slide wheel controls. And there's a tone circuit and a volume circuit that's dedicated to this rhythm switch, which sounds even distinctly different than the tone controls that you have down here on the bottom bout. So for scale length, remember this is a 25.5-inch guitar, just like a Strat or Telecaster. The Jaguar is going to be short scale. We'll get to that in a second. Pickups, they have a distinctly voiced Jazzmaster pickup tone, which has its own unique shape, winding, and magnetic configuration, which makes it distinctly different from the typical single coil pickups you'll find on other Fenders, and distinctly different from a P90 pickup that you'd find on something like a Gibson. And then in controls, I like the more intuitive controls with the three-way toggle on the Jazzmaster. Then you have the addition of the rhythm circuit. The thing about the Jazzmaster, it never really caught on with jazz guitarists, but it took off with a genre of music which went crazy, and that was surf rock. Capitalizing on that and looking to introduce a top-of-the-line guitar with new features, Fender debuted the Jaguar in 1962, so about 4 years later. This was obviously inspired by the design, offset design of the Jazzmaster, but had souped-up controls with more pickup configurations, more switching configurations. And remember the three things I told you: scale length, pickups, and controls. Starting with scale length, the biggest difference between a Jaguar and Jazzmaster is that a Jaguar is short scale. It's 24-inch scale length, so it's 1.5 inches shorter than a Jazzmaster or a Stratocaster or a Telecaster, and Fender was specifically targeting people who play Gibson guitars. Gibson guitars have a shorter scale length than Fender at 24 3/4. They went even shorter at 24 inches, and you will feel that in your hand. It's a slinkier playing experience, and the overall guitar is about 1.5 inches shorter than a Jazzmaster. That's a big differentiator when you're shopping between these two. Next is pickups. These pickups are going to be much more in line with what you'd hear in single coil pickups on a Stratocaster. They're really not all that different than the regular Fender single coil pickups. So if you prefer that sound, this will tend to be brighter than the more mellow, rounded tone from the Jazzmaster. And third, controls. Let's talk about those. Chromed out, you can see chrome plates everywhere, which is pretty cool. But the controls themselves, you have dedicated on-off switches for each pickup, and then a tone circuit, which is engaged by the last switch on the bottom bout. You have, just like the Jazzmaster, volume and tone. And then just also like the Jazzmaster, a dedicated rhythm circuit, which you flip on with this switch on the upper left bout. But because the pickups sound distinctly different from a Jazzmaster and Jaguar, these two guitars will not sound the same. The Jaguar will be brighter, shorter scale length, more controls, which to me I think are a little more confusing, if I'm being honest. The Jazzmaster will have more intuitive controls, a more mellow, low-focused, round tone than the brighter tone of the Jaguar. And both guitars have this really cool feature. You have a bridge which sits on two posts that are kind of rock back and forth. And that also leads to kind of distinct characteristic of tone. And you get these back swath of strings, which are actually fun to pick, and built into this floating bridge. The floating bridge is on both guitars, and it's distinctly different than the type of trem that you'll find on a Strat or something like a Maestro Vibrola on a Gibson. This is also a major part of both guitars' sound, and you'll hear that when we plug it in. All right, so my reaction to playing both the Jazzmaster and the Jaguar, got this beautiful Jazzmaster here. When I give guitars scores, I give them a score based on overall playability, overall sound, and overall value. I'm really gonna focus on kind of overall playability and overall sound that comes from the classic configuration or vintage configuration of the Jazzmaster and the Jaguar as represented here. And starting with the Jazzmaster, for a guitar that came out in 1958, and took some time to catch on, I'll tell you, I slept on the Jazzmaster. I learned even from our demo playing the Squier 40th anniversary Jazzmaster how much I like the feel of this. The biggest difference between the Jazzmaster and the Jaguar in terms of playability and feel is to remember that the Jazzmaster is full scale, 25.5-inch Fender scale length. That to me, to my preference, I love Telecasters, I love Strats. It makes it more playable right out of the gate because it feels more like what you expect a Fender to feel like. I also think the controls on the Jazzmaster are more intuitive. However, from a playability standpoint, I will knock both guitars on the intuitiveness of these controls. These controls are whacked. They are just totally whacked. The Jazzmaster is just whacked less. And it's more intuitive to change pickups when you have a classic three-way toggle than trying to have however many permutations you can have of 3 switches down here. And both of them obviously have the extra rhythm circuit up here. If I was gonna build a Jazzmaster, I'd keep these pickups, keep these simple controls, and move this toggle up here and eliminate the rhythm circuit. I'd probably, to tell you the truth, never use the rhythm circuit if I was playing this guitar, because you get enough of a distinct sound from the pickups themselves and from the distinct resonance that comes from these strings being pulled over the bridge and actually strung through this metal trem bar. And the trem bar is half the fun. The trem bar in both the Jaguar and the Jazzmaster really lend to that classic sound, and it's so much fun to play. They're not the most stable in terms of tuning. I will warn you right now, they are not very stable when it comes to tuning. Also, because the bridge sits on these 2 posts, I can actually physically move it. And just imagine, in combination with using the bar, this is kind of a potential design flaw in the guitar. The fact that this bridge can move so much means that your intonation, your spot-on tuning is at any given instant able to be thrown off by quite a bit just from the movable characteristic of this bridge. And that actually means a lot when it comes to trying to keep the guitar in tune. To give an overall score on playability, I'm gonna go ahead and give the Jazzmaster, I'll be friendly and give it an 8.0 on playability. I would give the Jaguar a 7.0 on playability. When it comes to sound, I would be much more generous on overall sound because I do like the characteristic of both. I'd probably give an overall score to the Jazzmaster of a 9.0, whereas I'd give overall sound on the Jaguar an 8.5. I give the Jazzmaster a higher score because it takes the characteristics I described, which both guitars have, and then adds the unique voice of these pickups, which is only a Jazzmaster can do. So I'd say the winner, in my opinion, hands down, the Jazzmaster. It's more playable. It's got these quirky, lovable flaws to it. Both of them are really fun, great sounding guitars. And at the end of the day, remember that there's one of these at each price point, and there's also the vintage and more contemporary take. If you want screaming humbuckers on these, you can get them. So hopefully hearing the playing examples from both guitars, you can tell the difference, and hopefully you can hear which one you might want to buy. A lot of the iterations on today's market are going to offer mods that either make them more player friendly with less controls, or give it a harder edge with a souped up humbucker. Right now, the spot-on recreation of a vintage Jazzmaster from Fender is going to be in the American Vintage 2 collection with their 66 Jazzmaster at $23.99. More vintage inspired, but with some modern appointments, will be the American Ultra or American Professional 2 at $22.49 or $17.99. But some of the best vintage-inspired recreations are actually in the mid to lower level tiers here, and that's the Vintera series. The Vintera 60s Jazzmaster is $12.99 and is meant to be a vintage recreation or inspiration from Fender. Great guitar to check out. And then it gets even more affordable because for under $500, you can check out the Squier Classic Vibe Jazzmaster or the Classic Vibe 40th Anniversary Jazzmaster, which are great guitars, both under $500. For more contemporary take on the Jazzmaster, because it is such a versatile guitar, you can check out models like the Jim Root Jazzmaster. Mid-level Player Series at $879 is really affordable, and that's gonna come with humbuckers instead of the Jazzmaster pickups. And then from Squier, Under $500 at $469, you can get the Squier Contemporary Jazzmaster with 2 humbuckers. All those are nice contemporary takes on the Jazzmaster construction. 2 other notables, one being the brand new gold foil Jazzmaster with 3 gold foil pickups. And last, a passing mention to the Acoustasonic Jazzmaster, which is really not much like a traditional Jazzmaster in any way, but shows you a further iteration if you want to go the Acoustasonic route, and that's available at 2 price points. The Jaguar actually has an interesting gap right now. So there was the American Original and American Vintage collections. When Fender did the American Vintage 2 collection, there is not actually a Jaguar. There is, however, the Johnny Marr Jaguar, which is inspired by his 1965 Jaguar, and that's at $24.99. Again, we come back to Vintera in the mid-range. For $13.99, you can get the Vintera 60s Jaguar. Definitely recommend the Vintera line from Fender. And then with the Jaguar in the Squier Classic Vibe series, you can actually choose from the 60s or 70s version of the Jaguar, both under $500. For a contemporary take, we'll talk first about the man himself, Kurt Cobain. He played a vintage Jaguar, but he did soup it up with some contemporary mods, and the Kurt Cobain Jaguar at $1549, that is a really, really cool model. Available, of course, in right-handed and left-handed configuration since he was a lefty. The Player Series at $879 will also give you a Jaguar with humbuckers, as will the super affordable Squier Contemporary HH Jaguar at $469. But hopefully in those recommendations, you'll find one that stands out to you, and check out the demos on our channel. Remember to click to buy using our link. Remember to drop a comment on our videos and watch one of these demos. Be in it to win it with our Les Paul Deluxe giveaway, and we'll see you on the next video. Thanks for hanging out on Play and Trade Guitars. I'm John, that's Zach behind the camera, and this is Play and Trade Guitars.